killed by Officer Gary Spath.
Shot in the back.
And according to the regional medical examiner,
Fidel
Fidel had his hands up when he was shot in the back. Killed. Spath did not go to jail. He did not go to jail, but the Fidel family suffered immensely behind the loss of their son. And it's just recently that I was able to reestablish contact with the Fidel family, with the mother and Philip's sister. They came to our statewide march against police brutality in 2015. Y'all remember the Million People's March we had in Newark against police brutality? Well, they attended that, and we have been in touch off and on ever since. And I'm glad to see the family has kind of bounced back with that family. People think of the victim when we talk about police brutality, but it's more than the person that dies. That's the victim. The family is victimized. You know, some of these families, most of the cases that become high profile, these families have to pay private attorneys. They don't get pro bono attorneys. You know how much a private attorney costs? I had to pay a private attorney for my daughter who got into a situation 3 years ago in New York City. That attorney was charging us $500 an hour. I know families that have had, just to have some legal representation, had to mortgage their homes and sell their homes and cash out their 401ks and even take money out of their pension funds. See, people don't talk about that part of it. We just talk about the incident. Well, this person was shot and killed 41 times. This person was shot and killed 27 times. But what the families have to go through is horrendous. We just went to the funeral. I don't know how many of you in here know the name of Earl Faison. Faison was killed by the Orange Police. We just went to the funeral of Earl's father. Now, Earl was beaten to death by 5 officers in Orange, New Jersey. And I'm not going to go into that story just yet or right now, but suffice it to say that it was the first time in the history of New Jersey that 5 officers went to jail. And people thought, well, some modicum of justice has been achieved. But they don't know. A year after Earl was killed, his mother died. And his mother died primarily of a broken heart and health problems brought on by the stress. Just like Erica Garner, right?
Yes,
The
yes.
daughter of Eric Garner, who was killed, who was strangled to death. That's the brother that said, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. You think his daughter would be dead if her father was alive? That struggle shifted onto her shoulders. 27 years old. Now she had to fight for justice for her father. She just had a baby. And she died from a heart attack brought on by a broken heart from losing her father. What the families go through is hardly ever discussed, because once the case is resolved legally, either in most cases the police walk or they get a slap on the wrist. Rarely is there a conviction, but once that final judgment is had, then it's not in the papers anymore. In the Faison case, the mother died a year almost to the day of the death of her son. After that, the father had health problems and ended up having to get one of his legs amputated. And it just goes on and on and on. And so this problem that you were discussing, this is a really serious problem, the problem of police brutality. But I was here in '89 for Philip Fidel. And I was here, we had meetings for the Million Man March in the mid-'90s. Million Man March was October 1995. We went city to city. We had some of our biggest meetings. We're here in this church and other churches in Bergen County. And folks have brought me back since, I believe Deacon Robinson is with this church, right? Mount Olive. He's brought me back every 3 or 4 years to come back, so I'm not a stranger, and I'm very glad to be here. And it was a very fruitful discussion. In fact, you really didn't need a guest speaker. You just could have kept having that discussion and dealt with the issues. But let me say this. There were a few things that came up in that discussion that I should address forthrightly because it has a direct relationship to Black History Month. The first one was the point about the Armistad Act, which was passed a little more, about a dozen years ago. The problem with Armistad is this. It has never been fully funded. Armistad has never been fully funded. They basically have one full-time staff person to oversee the implementation of the Armistad Act in over 600 school districts in the state of New Jersey. Now, do you think one person can effectively oversee the implementation? And you know what the Armistad does, right? The Armistad Act calls for the infusion of Black studies into all areas of curriculum, not just one Black studies course that students can take or not take, because I haven't seen a Black studies course yet that's required. They're all voluntary. Yeah. In college, they're called electives. Not unless you're in trying to get a doctoral degree in Black studies, but most Black studies courses are elective. Armistad says that Black history, Black contributions, Black achievements in all areas of life that information must be diffused into all courses of study. And every school district is supposed to come up with a plan as to how that is done. And the passage of Armistad was a monumental achievement. And one of the people you need to bring back in here to talk about Armistad was the two assemblymen. Bring both of them. The two assemblymen that were the co-prime sponsors of the legislation that made Armistad possible. That's former Assemblyman Bill Kane and former Assemblyman Craig Stanley. They were the prime co-sponsors of that legislation. And the passage was a monumental achievement because just think about it. It didn't require each school district to set up a Black Studies course. It required fundamentally the revision of the entire curriculum so that Black contributions to that area of study would be included. That's nothing to be sneezed at. It's very significant. And as people in the audience pointed out during the discussion, Armistad has not been fully implemented. So now, all the people in this room, I think, maybe, I could be wrong, but I think most of the people in this room that voted in the gubernatorial election voted for the new incoming governor, Phil Murphy. No. Most. How many did? How many voted for Murphy in the room? Just show by hand. Most of the people. Most of the people in this room voted for Phil Murphy. Now, the Democrats, I'm a Democrat, I voted for Murphy. Democrats now have control of the governor's office and the state legislature. Right? Got Democratic control in New Jersey. And all of the Democratic candidates that were in the primary, not just Murphy, all the Democratic candidates expressed support for the Armistad legislation. So now